Welcome to the Creative Island Podcast.
A show aimed at helping creative individuals transform their passion into profession.
Each episode will share powerful strategies, tips, and practical tools to empower you to create the income, the lifestyle, and the legacy you were designed for.
We are your hosts, Adam Bowman
and Jason Pepper.
Enjoy the show. Dude, Creative Island, we are back. It's been how long? To another 3 weeks, another month, pretty much. But we just had this discussion. We're not saving lives. This is like episode in the 20s, so we still have another like 60 to go before, or maybe 80, I guess, before like what the dudes who write about podcasts are saying about when it starts clicking. So, we got some time. But our numbers in, Portugal are going down, brother. So we got to get back on the horse and start today,
There you go.
But today we're going to talk about a scenario that I was in over the past month. I was on a TV show. I think I signed an NDA, so I can't really go into too many details about the actual, what the show is about. But it's a 4-episode miniseries. I learned a lot, which is good. And what I was telling you before, when I take these roles, it's not necessarily for the money. It's more for the connection and the knowledge you get from a lot of the experts in their field, or however you want to say that sort of thing.
Sure.
So you get to watch other people do their thing, take mental notes. A lot of the time on these smaller budget things, it's like what not to do, which is also a good frame of reference. If you see someone doing some dumb shit, you're just like, I'm not going to do that because it just looks bad, or it
Totally
puts a cog in the system and it doesn't work. But essentially my role when I onboarded was driver, just driver. And when you're in film, drivers, you just touch the keys in the steering wheel and that's it. And it's a 12 plus 1, so a 13-hour day. Generally starts at 8, call time. You get out at 9, and that's the typical stuff. But when you're a driver, you start a little bit early. You start at 7:20 because you got to pick people up, you got to shuttle. So that's when your day starts, when you're in the car. And then it ends when you park the car. So a lot of times you're going into overtime, which is great if the production allows for overtime, because it's time and a half after the 13 hours, which is awesome because my rate was dog shit. It's $225 a day, which is 18 an hour basically if you break it down.
Damn.
So then with 18, I think it goes up to 21 point something, which again is it's above minimum wage, which is great. And I'm in the field that I love. So it's not all that bad. But then basically the topic of this episode is getting taken advantage of because of, I don't know how to contextualize it into other things, but in film, mainly it's you're in a position of vulnerability because you're the lowest on the food chain, which is fine. And you're willing to do things to get you to, a higher place. I want to direct, but I also want to do a couple other roles in film because they're good at learning. You can get on more projects because every project has a director from the get-go, so it's really hard to get those projects right off the bat. Totally. So assistant directing is good. Working with any other departments is good because then you learn about those and you can use those for your toolkit. So the PM knew that I wanted to level up to some capacity going on to it because I worked with him on a last show. So he's okay, you're going to have some more responsibility. And right after that, I'm sick. I get to do more than just drive because, you know me, I'm like you where it's just I hate doing the bare minimum. Watching other people work sucks to me when it's they're in the trenches together. I want to be right there with them, especially on a film set because I'm good at problem solving, blah, 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 blah. But then at what point do you put your foot down when you're being taken advantage of in terms of they're taking your vulnerability and good grace of wanting to learn, and they're there's a pay cut or something the question for this podcast is at what point do you put your foot down? I'll give you the context of the scenario.
Sure.
So there's the assistant directing department. Are you familiar with the assistant directing department?
Yeah.
What do they do, Jason?
Sure. They're in charge of all the moving parts.
There you go. Yeah. They're there's a production coordinator, production management, and then right below them is the ADs who are on the floor. First AD is on the floor. They're in charge of the schedule. They're okay, we're on scene 2, shot whatever. We're going on to scene 3 next. Blah 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 blah. They're making sure everyone's on task and going through the motions and just getting shit done. And then the second AD does the call sheet. And among other things, they check out actors. They do a lot of other things. But the main job is the call sheet. You've probably seen a call sheet before, right?
I think so.
It has the call time right on the big. It has a bunch of information on it regarding what scenes you're shooting, what actors are in.
Right. It's like the daily agenda
exactly,
or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And then, I've been on productions where some of these are 45 pages long. I've been on productions where these are like 1 page long. So they vary. But this one, decent size. The second AD was jammed the whole time because, low budget production. We're going into overtime every day. We're having to shift scenes around. So he's busy. They didn't have a third or a fourth AD. Third AD is like the assistant to the first AD where they're like, they have their eyes on the cast at all times. They know when they're processing. They know what outfits they need to go into. They know what set they're flipping to, so they can just be behind the scenes and make sure everyone's like one step ahead. So when the first AD does something, everyone knows what task to be on because the third is there making sure that's getting done. And then the fourth is sort of like, they have them on bigger productions. This one we had it for 2 days just because like our holding and just a mess of information that goes into that. But like they just help out the third basically and making sure cast is getting where they're needed to be. And so like the third day, I remember the second day of this project, I'm like chilling there. I brought in my laptop. I was editing a podcast. I was like, man, Driver is great. I just didn't sit in the production office, do nothing. But then the first AD was getting swamped. Like I didn't know anyone at this point either. So like I didn't know like where I could put my step in and help out and like do my thing. But they're like the PM was like, yo, you gotta like help out the first. So I'm like, am I third AD then? Like what's going on? And it wasn't really set in stone. They're like, no, you're still Driver, but like just help them out. So I got bumped to third AD, but like an ego boost, no money, no pay, whatever, which is just like fine. I'm like, you know what? Like I get to be a third in heavy quotations on like a big show with a lot of money behind it, with a lot of like, it's going to do well. Like it was shot beautifully. The DP was awesome. So I was like, this is a great opportunity. I can learn, I can fuck up and it doesn't matter because I got volunteered into it. So, like low expectations, but a lot of room to learn and gain just a ton of knowledge. So I was like, sick. So for like the rest of the show, I was third ADing, which is just like, if anyone's like been in a third AD position, you're just running around like crazy. You barely eat lunch, like what we were talking about before. And you're just sending it as much as you can to make sure that this like train wreck is righting itself at like every single turn. Which is great. I learned a lot. I fucked up a lot, but I got to learn. The first AD loved me, so we're gonna work on I'm gonna like help shadow him on a couple projects and help him on their like vanity projects, which is great. Okay, a little context to that interruption. I went to a Lionel Richie concert and Earth, Wind, and Fire, so we bumped the day. So we're in the makeshift studio again today, so it's not technically booked. Sorry for the interruption. Where was I?
So you're doing all these roles.
Yeah, so I'm doing this role, and finally, like the last week comes, and I've done a lot of work, done a lot of overtime because I'm still driving. So my day starts when I pick people up, which is usually like 7:10 to 7:20, even earlier than that, depending on where we're shooting, whatever. And then it doesn't stop until I drop people off. But I'm still working like full crazy hours in between that with everyone else. And then I made a lot of connections. It was super great. And then the last week we were at a different location. We were at like Clendenin and Bloor, like High Park, in between High Park and Windermere, basically, in this condos. And like it was just a logistical nightmare because like we were shooting in this condo and our cast holding was a 5-minute drive away on Windermere. And like when you have like multiple episodes and scenes and like outfits needed to be and like the processing is 5 minutes away, it's just a nightmare. So like I was officially bumped to third AD, but on the call sheet they just said production assistant or something like that because with the size of the production, they needed you needed to be like a permit DGC to actually get the credit, which I was like, fine, like I'm not, like that's not something I'm interested in, so it is what it is. But then I get an email about my invoice from like the week before or the 2 weeks before because it was like a 2-week pay gap and you know.
Sure.
And it's like the PM being like, yo, you need to like fix like these overtime hours. He's like, you were logging like hours that weren't like you weren't supposed to work. And I had logged 8 hours of overtime, which is essentially with time and a half is basically like another 12-hour day. So I logged another 225, which I thought was sick because I'm like justifying working more. And it's just like an added boost to being like, what the work I'm doing here is needed and it's good. And it just made me feel good. I was like, you know what? I'm getting compensated for the work that's being done. But then this dude's like, you got to take 5 hours of overtime and shove it up your ass because you're not getting. He didn't say that, but that's basically what I felt. He was like, you're only getting 3 out of these 8 hours. I'm like, bro, what? Like I went around, I'm like, is this like legal? Like, and then his like rationale was that like people were asking me, it was just a bullshit rationale. So I was like, fuck, I told the first AD, I'm like, yo, I'm going to walk like at lunch. I'm like, I can't do this. Like I've been breaking my back like 80, 90 hour weeks. And just to get a lot of money that I feel like I'm owed by like sticking my neck out, doing more than I should be. Cause like earlier, like what I said, I should just be touching keys in the steering wheel and that's it. Right. So I was like, okay, this isn't fucking right. So I called my dad. Like anyone like who's lucky enough to have a father like mine, you call your dad because in situations like this, like I'm a Bowman, so I'm stubborn as hell and I get it from him. And I was just like, I need to call him, get some guidance and see if this is a bad decision or not. And he didn't pick up, but I texted him and he's like, yeah, you're going to regret it. Don't walk off. Do the last like 4 days and like at least get that money and then it'll be justified and you'll just regret it. And I was like, okay, fine. But the question that I pose is like, at what point do you walk out? At what point do you say, no, those are my hours. I need those hours. Like I've worked my ass off. Like, how do you refuse the vulnerability that you're in and get compensated for like the hours you deserve? That's sort of the question of the podcast, I think, today. Because it's like, I think I was in a position where like, if I walked off, yes, I would have been justified, I think, for my position. But I would have regretted it, so I didn't. And I'm glad I stuck it out because a lot of people saw, like, that knew the circumstances, were like, okay, you're a stand-up guy. Like, it was just good credibility amongst my peers on the show. But at the same time, I'm like, that's like $140 I'm not seeing, which isn't a lot. But, like, when you're working like a dog.
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't matter if it's $20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when you're working like that. Man, there's so much to unpack here. So, like, the first thing I want to say is, like, we all have to pay for our education.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes like most of your career, most of your life, because you got to get through. But then I never did that.
Yeah.
And I jumped ship as soon as something was, I didn't feel that I was worth it. Like I felt like I was worth more. And so there's an old story that I'll share really quick. And I don't know where I picked it up from. It's just something that always stuck with me. So I might butch it a little bit, but you'll get the
just paraphrase it.
You'll get it. And so there's this old story of this kid, and he's got his grandfather's pocket watch, and he's like, I wonder what this pocket watch is worth. So he goes to the pawn shop, right? And the pawn shop guy says, oh, it's a nice old watch. I'll give you $1,000 for it. The guy's like, nice. Whoa, this must be a nice watch. So he goes, okay, hang on. I don't know. I'm going to go see the watchmaker and let him tell me. So then this kid takes the pocket watch from the pawn shop. He goes to the watchmaker, and the watchmaker says, wow, this is a really amazing watch. There's some precious metals in here. This is like a good piece. It's Swiss. I'll give you $10,000 for it. Wow. And then the kid goes, whoa, I mean, 10,000, that's a big jump. Maybe I should go see like the museum and they'll be able to tell me more about it. And so then the kid takes the pocket watch from the watchmaker and he goes to the museum and he goes to sit down with the guy. And the guy says, we'd like to offer $1 million for this watch. This is so and so. And so the moral of the story is like, hang out with the people that pay you what you're worth. Because you can spend your whole life thinking you're worth more, but just hanging around, you're just in the wrong boat. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you to get up and get in the different boat, right? And so it's tough because you want to pay for education, which I'm a big believer in.
Yeah.
I paid for my fair share.
Yeah.
But I also didn't feel that I was, like I've done stuff for free for people, but there was a mutual sustainable transaction, even though money wasn't the compensation. There was other things that was compensated.
Yeah.
So I never felt like, I don't think it's wise to go into a deal where you don't think that you're getting a fair, sustainable transaction, even if it's not money. You don't have to get money in exchange. But I think it should be sustainable, and film is brutal. Like the arts, it's not just film.
It's across the board.
Yeah, I'm sure we could pull up a whole list of industries where that's the name of the game is to wrestle the next guy into submission, so that So I don't know. Anyway, I just thought, hey, know your worth and try your best to like You have everything you need right now to do the things that you want. The problem is, because I know that there are guys worse than you that are doing better than you.
Oh, for sure.
And I know there are guys that are better than you that are doing worse than you that you may never hear of in your whole life. And so for that reason alone, it's like, if you're just in the wrong, if you're just hanging out at the pawn shop all the time or the watchmaker guy, and maybe there's just some kind of a different boat you can get in, you know?
It's very true. I mean, it's the same like ideals of what you said a couple times in the past of the pod. Like if you have an idea that's big as your city, it's like, you know, think bigger, think of your country.
Yeah, try to expand your space and time horizons.
Yeah,
give you better perspective, because we become victims of our perspective oftentimes. And so if your perspective is really small, you'll probably just frustrate and you'll be pissed off. But you know, if your vision matches where you are in life, you're going to be totally content. You're not going to have that emotion there.
Yeah.
So
now, if this person asked you to work for them again, what would you do?
If it wasn't mutual, no.
Okay.
Hard no.
Yeah.
Because like if you go above and beyond for somebody, and they know that you're doing things outside of your lane, and they have a hunch that you're trying to learn and gain some insight. You want to get behind the wheel and drive, but you know, you can't do it all the time. And they see that. I think at least they could owe you something in exchange, right?
Yeah.
Taking it from you like that isn't fair. That's just not fair.
But then it's tough because in the context of film, like it's dog eat dog at its best. So it's just like
in the big unions and these big, for sure. If you're the guy trying to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder in the union, no, it's dog eat dog, and it's
they'll push the ladder over whenever they get the chance.
Yeah,
so you have to start over.
Like, so the trick is you have to think outside the box so that you can be the guy that they want to put at the helm, not the guy that's trying to work up to the helm. Like you have to kind of skip the line. And this is like this in every
no, for
this
sure.
Isn't just
business,
film.
no, totally.
Film, I think, is a bit more of the Wild West. Music, their art disciplines, creative disciplines tend to be a bit more like less, I don't know, regulated is the right word, but it's like the fucking
morals and ethics are generally tossed out of the window on most things, other than when you're actually working on set.
They're lower on the criteria than in other industries. So
like
that's
the ESG score of like film is fucking awful. But I mean, honestly, it's probably really good because they're good at like finagling that system. But like morals and ethics are out the window. Like there's a lot of other shit that happened that I just can't talk about because I don't like it's not like I'm mad at the PM or anything. Like it's more on myself where it's just like you let that happen to yourself.
Yeah.
Next time you got to make sure that you realize it. Like not the third week in the first couple of days.
No, but it's tough because then they say, "Oh, can you mind just helping?" And you're like, "That's out of my job."
Yeah.
Like now you can't expect to, because it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? But people should see that, and I think there should be a fair transaction. You should leave, maybe not with more money, but at least with something of value that you could say, I'll pay for that thing.
Well, that's why I was like, if I'm going to do, like I didn't corner him. I was like, I got to find some leverage that I can at least come up feeling good about myself. So I like negotiated me getting a third AD credit instead of a driver credit. So I'm really hope like when I see it that it's not like Adam Bowman driver. Because like people started calling me Adam Driver, and I fucking hate that shit. Like the like Star Wars guy, Marriage Story. Like I'm just like, no, it's not my name. It's not what I'm trying to be remembered for as like a production vehicle. It's a thankless job, and a ton of people do it. But they're also unionized and get paid really good money and have full benefits, full dental, whatever. Right. So when you're working, it's just like it's hard. And I don't want it to make it seem like I'm crazy complaining. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because it's just like it's the last time I'm gonna let it happen to me. But at the same time, I was also in a box because I had told everyone to screw off until like the 6th or whatever, like whenever I was like off and had a day to breathe and like figure out what my next like step forward was in terms of like finding more film roles or going down in the business. And like I'm trying to do more business before the year ends. But I just told all the clients whatever to like screw off, and I kind of scared some away and sent them with other people, which just sucked because like the pond got a lot bigger in that. Like I let some other people in and like talking to some clients I have, which just sucks. But I mean, that leaves another door open to onboard more and do more work and like see some different faces out there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you got some work. It maybe didn't go as well as it could have, but like you have to just kind of take it on the chin and keep going. But don't work for people where it's not mutually, where it's not sustainable.
Yeah, there's like life's too short.
But then also, you're also competing with a bunch of other people who are trying to work their way up in the same way.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's a good way to differentiate yourself.
No.
Like, even if you're awesome, you know how many other people are awesome that would be drivers and then go from driver to whatever. And so just, I would find a different angle, like like looking outside in, bring your perspective way outside of that situation and try to look outside in and be like, what are the things that I can do differently to not compete, like to make me only, not
that's
me
good.
too.
Yeah, it also, like what you're saying, it also pisses me off when I hear a lot of, it doesn't piss me off, it pisses me off in the good way that makes you want to work harder, like, or smarter. Like, it's a fine line between harder and smarter sometimes, because sometimes you think if I just work 14-hour days, it'll be a lot easier, but that's not the case at all.
That's not the case, but that's the other thing too. Like, you shouldn't work, like, 8-9 hours in a day can be super productive.
Oh, for sure.
But there's so many inefficiencies in that industry and bullshit and whatever, and so they're just stealing time from you, really.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, if you got the show, you got the script, you got everyone there, you got 100 bodies that you're trying to finagle and get this shit done. Like, it's going to take a while. Like, that's like, but like the negotiations of all that stuff that happens in prep and pre-production, like it's not 12-hour days generally, depending on how long they get for prep, which I assume for this one wasn't a long time. But what I want to say is just like, I talk to a lot of directors who are older than me, because I always try to chew their ear off and just see like what their route was, see if I can take a couple nuggets here and there. But some people, it's just like, yeah, like I bought a camera when cameras are hard to get, use a little bit of nepotism, and now I direct TV shows, or like, and some of them just like, so you didn't grind, like you weren't the bottom of the barrel. They're like, no, I never shot music videos. I never really I just started directing. Just like that shit, I'm just like, it really grinds my gears.
But where and how?
That's what I mean. But like, if you came up in the 90s or early 2000s, the landscape is completely like flipped on its head in terms of how people shoot things and the capacity and the money that's available for all of these. And now with the strike is a total other thing. It's a lot harder for me to get the roles I was just doing on that show, because like I thought I was gonna be fine, but it's trickling down from like the top to the bottom, where it's like, if there's like a feature, a micro budget, anything, micro budget's like $3 million below, which is crazy to call that micro budget, because to me that's like an insane amount of money. But Barbie was like $200 million budget, and they blew that out of the water like the first week of box office. But anyways, it's like you have all these top tier people, like heads of departments of like wardrobe, costume, like the whole nine, and not all of them are out of work. So if they can get paid scale, that's how like micro budget stuff works. They all get like a percentage cut off. Right. And they agree, like, I need work anyways, might as well work in the field. So they all come down and work. So they're top tier professionals that have been doing it for like 10 to 20 plus years. And you're like trying to break out. I've been doing it for 5 years, and even that's a stretch to some capacity. There's no way you're going to get looked at. So it's another reason why film is just like, it's hard to like weasel your way in, other than being like, you just got to make some crazy shit and hope that people see
like,
it too.
Well, it's no different in all the other businesses. Like, you have to differentiate, and like, I think with film, the only way you can really differentiate is like the quality of the film, right?
Yeah.
Or the quality of the story, or the reaction you pull out of the audience, or something, right? Like, you have to be provocative enough to demand attention. And if you can do that, it doesn't matter. Like, you're not competing with all those union people. You're not competing with all those people anymore.
It's also like about part of me skipping the line, like you said, is just like from going to what I'm doing now and just like solely just directing. Which I think is like, if you want to be a director, why are you taking driving roles? You know what I mean? So I have to like think about that and be like, because it's also cushy when you get something like that. It's like, oh, it's 4 weeks of shooting. That's 4 weeks of pay. That's like 4 weeks of stuff that like, I don't even know if I'm going to book anything after the business or whatever. Totally. So it's just like, I'll take that. But I think next time I got to think about it, like, it's going to be a 4 week shoot, 4 week shoot, a month shoot. Let me say no. And like, work out how much money I'd be getting paid and see if I can like double that, like, or like,
Yeah. And part of it, I think, is like, if you know exactly the type of, like, in my business, for example, I know exactly the type of customer that would buy my shit. Mm-hmm. I know exactly how much they'd be willing to pay for a certain amount of work.
Yeah.
I know how the transaction goes. I've done the process so many times that I can do it in my sleep.
Yeah.
And knowing that, I'll never take the low-hanging fruit because I know that other paycheck, that big paycheck that I like to get is like, it's right there. It's just like my process to get that paycheck is like more comfortable than like taking the easy road.
Yeah.
Now, right? And so part of me is just like, well, if you're like taking the low hanging fruit over the really good stuff, maybe it's just a matter of like defining a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you define it more clearly, and then you might be able to like, you won't be persuaded by the low hanging fruit because you're just like super defined in this lane, and you're like, no, absolutely not. I'd be like taking a huge pay cut to do that, and it would not be cool.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you don't have something clearly defined enough, you're going to be like, I'll take whatever comes because I don't know when the next one is. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know what even it looks like. And so, I don't know if that's helpful.
No, I mean, that's where like, it's just volatility. It's just like, how much do I want to take on? How much do I feel comfortable with? But it's just at some point you got to say like, fuck it. Like, fuck the low hanging fruit.
Like at some point you just have to jump off, and it doesn't feel nice, but you don't die. Yeah. It's all good.
I live at home. It's not like I'm even going to get kicked out of my apartment or anything.
You won't die. And then you can't even comprehend the way, like the complexity of like cause and effect relationships in the world. So like you jump off, it's super scary. You don't know where the next buck's coming from. You don't know where the next movie's coming from. But then in the weirdest way, someone calls you, somebody walks in the room, you have a conversation with somebody, you meet somebody, and all of a sudden it's not so scary anymore. You just couldn't see the path, but you never can. You can't see the path ahead. You just have to like do it unapologetically and trust that something's coming around the next corner, and it's the right thing for you, and it'll help just propel you along, right? Until you just define it super clear.
It's so true, because like when I think it was like the last week I got like someone I'd worked with reached out and was like, oh, I have this person who wants like what I was telling you about, like the learning modules for a law class. And I was just like, man, if there's a lot of modules, like I can just charge for law, you know what I mean? Like, and plus if it's coming from a big school, so I'm just like, it's just sort of like one of those signs where it's just like, this is where like you need to be looking at, because that's just like, you can build a team. Like there's just so much stuff that my mind goes to where it's like, if I can get like, 10 of these separate modules a year, like I can just build a team around it. I can just book them, and like I don't even have to do anything. And it's just like, once you get that ball rolling, it's hard because I have like one or two consistent clients, but it's for something super niche where it's like hard. It's like, you can't build a team around that because that's just like a monthly thing, one day a month or one day every 2 months. So
that in itself makes it not a good opportunity, right? Yeah. So you have to just clearly define what it is, because then when you know what it is, then you don't have to take the other stuff. Yeah. You just get in with the right crew, you get in with the right referral partners, you build your power teams in your niche. Like, hey, I'm Adam Bowman, the like docu-style guy. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. I can do like dramas, or I can do these other things, but like it's not really for me, or it's like a bit of a step down, right? Or whatever.
Or you pass them on, like, I was learning this from Chris Doe from the future. I talked about him a little bit.
Yeah,
I
think
this.
so. We talked about it.
But he was just like, he's like, never like shut someone down and be like, no, I can't do this. Go find someone else. You say, no, I can't do this, but I know someone who can. So it's still a positive interaction between someone.
Totally. And you get referrals.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Referrals pay.
Yeah.
Like finder fees are a real thing. And if you're around a bunch of film people and you're like, you like connect somebody with an artist that needs a music video, they should pay you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a no-brainer, yeah. But the thing about like Toronto is like in like the position I'm in, there's like this. It's like a small club of people where if like you're not in that club, you're not getting you're not getting booked on like the coolest shit, the bigger stuff. Right. And it's just also because like I do so many different things that like I need to start concentrating. I mean, I've been telling myself this for years, but I just love working in film. It's just like, I mean, like, well, what would that be like? You know what I mean? I'm still in like that research phase almost, where it's like directing's the thing, but I'm like, what other avenues can I do? Because like, it's hard to be a director 24/7.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
in terms of money. So let's talk in terms of money. I want to make money. Okay, making money is the pursuit of basically taking a skill that you have, and giving it to somebody who wants it for whatever. So you package it in our file. I make videos about X for X. Find client, figure out a price point that works for them. That's not the hard part. And then you got money, presto, right?
Yeah.
But you want to niche more than that. You don't want to be like, you don't want to be a media firm doing
10,000
different projects with a bunch of different people. Like, that's not the place to hang out. You want to be super specific, super clear on what it is, super tight with your power teams, and just like laser focused on X. And then figure out who would benefit from those things. You know what I mean? Like, like if it's I don't know, we talked about docu-style stuff. So anything docu-style, who would need docu-style? How can you reach out to someone and convince them to give you money to make a docu-style? How can doing a doc style add a shitload of value to somebody? If they see it, they'll pay it proportionate to the value.
Yeah.
And so if you convince somebody to pay you $1 million to do a doc thing, but their brand and their whatever is going to benefit 10 times, they'll pay you $1 million.
Yeah.
You just got to put it all into a bit of a frame of reference. And I think you're, you know, it'll help.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of documentaries barely see $1 million for
whatever.
Like, you know what I mean? But it's just no. But like doc is definitely where I'm at. But like since like I've reflected on that, and I mean it was only last week, but I'm like, my dad and I are developing another script, like, and
Nice.
and the one we just shot is coming out soon. We're gonna submit it a bunch of places, and like I've got a couple more docs like in the tank. But it's just like getting there is like bridging the gap between like when that stuff starts is like the harder part. You know what I mean? Like, because in film, it's just like, you just feel like, because like I'm also so new to it, which I don't like the thing, it's so big.
Yeah.
When you start at the bottom, like your perspective, like you're saying, is like it's hard to look in, because to look from the outside in, you have to like go to like the perspective of Bob Iger, who's like the fucking CEO of Disney, who's just a piece of shit right now,
Right.
expecting writers to become homeless before like they settle on anything. That guy's a piece of shit, but it's just like he has like the grand scope. He's like pulling strings like beyond like just one like film or whatever. So it's hard to like look that big. So it's like an incremental step of being able to level up, I think, in terms of like, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm like thinking about it all wrong, but
No,
like,
it's just like you have to, in order to be desirable in the marketplace by anybody. Let's take soccer, for example, like just to change lanes to show you the parallel. Like there are millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of, maybe billions, I don't know, of kids that grow up playing soccer that think that they're going to be the next Messi, right? And so it has little to do with like the things like the people that you know and all. Like everybody makes up reasons. Like, oh, he was at the right camp with the right people, or oh, he had better coaches than me. Oh, he had all these things.
nepotism, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Whatever, right? Yeah. When in reality, the guys that make it to the top did things to get noticed, and that came from developing their skills. And so I think in film, I can't see it being any other way. Like develop a skill far beyond who you can't compete against the whole world. You got to narrow it down. You need a niche, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this. But then if you niche down well enough, then you, in that smaller pool of people, you have to just outskill them.
Yeah.
And that you gotta grind. You gotta work at it.
No, I like that.
You gotta put the reps in. You know?
I like that. I think it's a good place to end. It's a lot of like breathing room for people to think about. There's a lot to unpack. But I think like, the message is like, if you feel like you're vulnerable in some situation, try to find an avenue to make yourself less vulnerable, or cut that out entirely by just making your either products and services or your skills worth more than they seem.
Totally.
At the end of the day.
The future belongs to those bold enough to ask for it. So get out there and ask for it. Ask for what you want.
Jason Pepper, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching Creative Island. We're back. We should be back to a regular scheduled programming as per usual. We'll see. We're new to this too. So thanks for hanging in there. Cheers.
If you enjoyed today's episode, Please leave us a review. And if you'd like to be notified of more episodes, please be sure to follow the Creative Island podcast now.
Want access to exclusive content, our community newsletter, live events, and so much more? Visit creativeisland.online today to join the Creative Island community.
See you at the top.